Welcome again to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. I'm Zack, Hewlett, joined again by my co-host Jack Bryce, and today we are joined from the Great North. Is it the Great White North, Alaska? By Brandt Peacock. Brandt, tell us exactly where you're calling from tonight.
I'm calling from Kodiak, Alaska. I'm stationed here with the U.S. Coast Guard at base Kodiak, Alaska.
Oh, man, love it. Well, good. Well, thanks for coming on and spending some time with us. We're excited to catch up and reminisce a little bit, just to reiterate the format. We'll talk pre-mission and the run-up to getting your call and then going to the MTC, then jump the mission, talk life since Scotland, and then we'll go back. So the floor is yours, Brandt. Go ahead. We're excited to hear from you.
Sounds great. And you know that I'm a talker, so you can cut me off whenever you whenever you want to cut me off. So
you got it, buddy.
Yeah, so rolling up to my mission, I'm from Castledale, Utah, central eastern Utah, kind of out in the boonies. And just like normal, graduated high school and always knew that I would serve a mission, had great, faithful parents. And I went that summer to go work in Logan. My sister was, her husband was at Utah State, and she was working some telemarketer job. And I thought it'd be good for me to get out of the house, experience life a little bit, and get a job in a place where I didn't know anybody except for my sister. So I went up and got a job in Logan, and I was doing surveys, which I found I was okay at because I could do accents. And so wherever we were calling, I would just mimic the accents. I remember us calling doing corn surveys, and so I changed my accent to match theirs. Or I remember doing shopping surveys in New York and changing my tune to try to get surveys. But the job came to an end, and it was a terrible job anyways. Nobody likes a telemarketer, right? And so in that summer, I was looking. I didn't want to run back home. I was out there to try to learn and kind of go on this adventure. And so I went and got a temp job, and the temp jobs in Logan were all at cheese factories. So I went I remember I was doing 410s, and my only job was to stack bricks of cheese for 10 hours a day. It was not a great job. And it would come off the line. I was also the only white person on the factory floor, and they wouldn't let me eat lunch with them. That's the first time I'd ever seen discrimination, and they wouldn't let me eat lunch with them. They didn't want me to be there, and so I would stack until lunch, and then I would go to my car and I would study the Book of Mormon in preparation for my mission. Then I'd go back for another 5 hours and stack bricks of cheese until they came to me one day and said, "We don't have any more work for you." I went back home and started up on a farm, and I worked on a farm until it was time to go. While I was working in Logan, I got my call. My parents drove to Salt Lake, and I came down from Logan. We met at my sister's house, and I remember that obviously emotional moment, opening my call and seeing Scotland and being overcome with emotion, and began to cry, and just knew that it was right. I knew that that's where I was supposed to go, and I was excited. I was elated. And so I went to work on the farm for a few months, and that was an experience. And while I was there on that farm, there was a kid in school with me who had always struggled spiritually, struggled just kind of in life. He wasn't that active. And we got to know each other very well, working wheel lines together. And as we did, he made the decision that he also wanted to serve a mission. And so I felt like in that lead up, as I was trying to do that as well, I had good experiences and good conversations with a fellow classmate of mine that resulted in him going on mission. His name was Weston Brinkroff. He's a great guy. And so then, just like you all, I shipped out to the MTC. I was in Elder King's group. You've had him on, in Garrett Smith's group, a bunch of other guys. Got to the MTC in England, and it was good. But I immediately was stunned at some different things. the MTC president wasn't that nice. Maybe I can't say that on here. I'm just being honest. He wasn't that.
You can say whatever you want.
Cool. I was cleaning the bathroom one day. I remember I had drawn the lot to clean the bathrooms. And so I was cleaning the bathrooms. I'm scrubbing the toilet. And I remember whistling a hymn. And I felt so happy in my heart, happy to be on a mission. And I was whistling a hymn, not even thinking about it. And he came up and berated me that I had driven away the spirit by my whistling. And I thought, I don't know who this guy is, but this is not my guy. And everybody's, oh, well, he's very rich, airline. Oh, he's very wealthy. He's comparing watches with some other rich kid that was there with us. And I thought, this is just not I'm from coal country in middle of nowhere, Utah. But I'll whistle if I dang well please while I scrub a toilet. So that's my own attitude right off the bat. But I loved the MTC. I loved that our MTC sent us out to tract in England. And I felt that was a really cool experience. Instead of just learning about it and showing up in your mission, kind of an intermediate period where we got to go out and try to share the gospel with people that were getting inundated with it every week from the MTC mission. It was a great experience. It's a great experience in the MTC. Yeah.
Remind us timeline when that was. When did you enter the MTC?
Sure. Came in October of 2005. Yep.
Okay.
October 2000. And no, so it was great. We jumped a train, just like you. Jumped on a train, went up to Edinburgh, got checked into our bed and breakfast, went in and met with the Vriens. And then there was a bunch of all the potential trainers that were there. And we were all kind of paired up. I think President Vriens wanted to see who would kind of be drawn to each other. We went out and we tracked that night in Edinburgh. And I was assigned to Elder Osmond. And we went out and we tracked and came back and got our assignments. And they said, Elder Osmond's going to be your trainer. You're going to go to Inverness. And so the mission began.
I love it. All right. Before we get too thick into that, let's jump into life after the mission real quick and catch us up on the last 15, 16, 17 years.
Whew, all right. So came home from my mission, started studying at the College of Eastern Utah, which is now USU Eastern, got bought out by USU. And it's there in Bryce. So started going there and started studying communications. And while I was doing that, I found a psychology professor who was just awesome. And so I took all of his psychology classes just because they were fun. He was a really great guy. And just trying to figure out what it was I was supposed to do with my life, like you do when you come home and start a new adventure. And while I was there, my friend Weston Brinkerhoff that I just told you about, who I'd worked on the farm with, he had gotten home from his mission as well. And he called me up and he said, dude, have you read this book, Lone Survivor, about Navy SEALs? And I was like, yes, I've read it twice. He's like, we need to become Navy SEALs. And I was like, that sounds freaking awesome, except for one problem. I know that I'm not a Navy SEAL. And those of you who know me and served a mission with me are probably like, that's not a freaking Navy SEAL. I definitely am not. And so I said to him, man, I don't think I can make SEAL team. And he said, I just did the workout. I know you can swim. Let's work out together. I just made the cut for the first tier of SEAL training. Come and let's be SEALs together. I said, I don't know, man. I don't know. He said, well, can I send my recruiter really wants to meet you? I said, your recruiter would love to meet my grandma if her ASVAB score was high enough, right? It's a freaking military recruiter. He says, well, he really wants to meet you. I said, well, if you want to drive all the way from Salt Lake down to Bryce to talk to some random kid, he can have at it. I don't care if he comes or not. Now, having been in the Navy, I realized that guy just got a government vehicle and a day off to like drive around the state. I take that deal every day of work. So this Navy recruiter shows up. Navy recruiter shows up at my school and he says, hey, he gives me the great Navy speech, which is you can travel the world, meet new and exotic people, and kill them. That's a great Navy speech, right? And so I sit here and I listen to this guy, and he's kind of droning on, and he looks at me and he stops kind of suddenly, and he said, "Are you a Mormon?" He said it real disgustedly. And I thought, "You're in Utah, man. We're all Mormons." Right? And he said,
That's it.
"Yeah," he said, "I'm not. I'm a Catholic." And I thought, "Okay, good for you. What do you say to that?" And he just kind of stared at me and he said, "I have the distinct feeling you're supposed to be a chaplain." And he said, "But I don't deal with chaplains. I can't recruit them. They're officers. I'm an enlisted recruiter. I know nothing about them. Here's my card. Don't call me. I don't really know anything about it." And he left.
Wow.
And I was kind of taken back. While I had been on my mission, my mom had sent me an article from the Reader's Digest. I'm like old people magazine. Reader's Digest that was about military chaplains. And I thought, do we even have chaplains in our church? And it turns out at that time we had 5 in the Navy, 5 Navy chaplains from our church. And so I thought, I had remembered back to my mom sending me that. And about the same time, a little bit later, my grandma was dying in the hospital at Utah Valley there in Provo. And a chaplain had come to see her. And chaplain started to talk with her and brought her a lot of comfort kind of in her last dying days. And so all of a sudden, this idea of chaplaincy keeps coming up in really weird kind of spiritual ways. And so I began thinking about it and began to pray about it. And I had a sacred experience where I felt God wanted me to do that, to pursue being a chaplain. I told my parents this will mean that I'll probably never be back in Utah very often in my life. There's not really a lot of Navy bases on the Great Salt Lake. And they said, you need to do what God's calling you to do. And so I got really excited and I called church headquarters, as you do. I called church military relations. I said, "Brother Clausen, you'll never believe it. I've had a revelation. I'm supposed to be a military chaplain." He said, "Well, good for you. 8 people call me a day with revelations." He said, "First off, are you married?" I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Strike one." Okay. He said, "Do you have a bachelor's degree?" I said, "No." He said, "Strike 2." He said, "And if you don't have a bachelor's, you certainly don't have a master's degree. Strike 3, you're out. Call me when you got a master's degree and a wife." It's like, wow.
Whoa.
Hey, I got some work to do. So I felt like, all right, well, I'm supposed to be a chaplain. So I kept studying, but coming out of College of Eastern Utah, I was broke. I had scholarships, but I'm not from a rich family. I was broke. And so I recruited for the College of Eastern Utah. They offered me to come and recruit with them for a semester, and they would pay me well, that would get me on my feet to get me through my next years of school so that I could get to my university. And I thought it was a good opportunity to see the different schools around Utah and meet with their recruiters. So I'd hear all their pitches. I'd know, where I was supposed to go. And so as I worked with these recruiters, it was awesome. That's when I would come hang out with you.
Yeah.
And, kick around there. And I remember I wanted to go to the University of Utah. I want to go to the University of Utah, one, because me and Hewlett sang about it all the time on our missions.
That's
and
right.
When you're from Utah, I just didn't, in my hometown, I think BYU would accept like 2 kids out of my graduating class. And I thought that was pretty snotty. And so I was ready to go to the University of Utah. I listened to their pitch. Weber State came to me while we were on the road recruiting and said, "Hey, you're pretty funny. Why don't you come to Weber State and we'll give you full tuition, full ride, full housing, full food." I was like,
oh gosh,
I'd probably go to Weber State. These guys are super nice to me. And a kid named Aaron Coombs from BYU said, "Why don't you come take a tour of BYU?" And I said, "I don't want to." And he said, "Come tour BYU." And I said, "I know what's down there." I said, "I'll go tour BYU, but when we do it, I want a golf cart and I want to count how many kids are wearing blue polos and khakis. That's what this adventure is about." So we went down to BYU, driving around, and I'm just counting kid in khakis. I'm just cracking all the jokes about BYU. And I remember we went over to the Joseph F. Smith building. And as we kind of went in there, it's a building that's in kind of a U shape in a Spanish style. And I went in there, and there's a fountain there. And in the middle of that fountain is granite from Salt Lake Valley. And the fountain is bubbling forth, obviously symbolically. And I remember feeling the Spirit. And that was nice. But I was going to go to the University of Utah. So I went back to my desk at College of Eastern Utah and had all my stuff ready. And I mean, this is weeks later. I haven't even thought about it. And all of a sudden, I get an impression: apply to BYU. And I thought, Lord, I'll do a lot of things, but I can't do this. The Spirit said again, apply to BYU. And I thought, oh boy, all my sisters have gone to the University of Utah. My man Hewlett's at the University of Utah. I thought, okay, well, I'll apply to BYU. Sure. What's the deadline? So I looked up the deadline. It was that day at 4:00.
Whoa.
My bishop was a half hour away, and I called him and I said, hey, I think I'm supposed to apply, but you got to come interview me in the next half hour. So he drove over, he interviewed me. I searched all over town to try to find my stake president, a member of my stake presidency, couldn't find one. And I thought, well, there it is. It's a sign. I went back to my office and I sat down and my boss, who is a spiritual man, I said, well, I tried. And he said, Brandt, if you're going to do something, then make it not meant to be on the Lord's part and not on your part. Go find the member of the stake presidency. He works at the hospital. So I walked around this hospital asking people for him until I walked into a meeting where he was. And he came out, did the interview. So I finally got that. I'm rushing back to my office. I look at the paperwork, and there's 3 500-word essays I've got to write.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, this is terrible. So the first one said something like, why do you want to come to BYU? I wrote, I don't.
That's it.
I said, I don't want to come to BYU. I feel like I'm supposed to be a chaplain. I was prompted to apply. Next question. Why would you be a good fit for BYU? I wrote something similar. I feel like I'm supposed to pursue military chaplaincy. Next question. I wrote 2 lines on each essay.
Oh my gosh.
I sent it in. And I thought, University of Utah, here we come. In the mail, I got my acceptance letters to both on the same day. And I knew, I'm convinced that somebody at BYU had read all those essays that every kid had spent time on and finally got to mine and was like, finally. I knew that God had paved my way into BYU, that I couldn't even trying to not get picked up, I did. And so I knew where I was supposed to go. And so I ate my humble pie and moved up to Provo and had nowhere to live, just went in and found an apartment on the wall of the Wilk and moved in with some weird dudes that I'd never met and started really pursuing my degree. Well, I went in to say, hey, I'm studying communications. I've got now my associates, and my associates is communications heavy. BYU said, we don't have a communications program. It's like, well, that's great. I said, well, I took a lot of psychology classes. I know chaplains do a lot of like psychology stuff with people. I took all the psychology classes at College of Eastern Utah. So they looked at my transcripts and they said, oh, not only did you take all those psychology classes, but your professor is a PhD from BYU. We know him. We'll accept all of those credits for your higher levels right now. It's like, wow, knocked off a complete semester of my schooling for me. Knocked that semester off. And they said, but here's the thing. When you graduate, when you're ready to graduate, you'll be short 12 credits. You need to go play racquetball or something. You need to have a whole semester where where you have these credits. I said, okay, got it. So I went to my first semester at BYU. It was hard. I did okay. And then that summer, my bishop's wife from down in Castledale, she called me up and said, I'd like to meet with you. I said, sure. She had always been very super nice to us. And so when I was down visiting my parents, I stopped in to see her. And she said to me, hey, Brandt, I've been praying a lot. And you're supposed to go do the BYU Jerusalem Center program. And I said, well, that's really cool. I got $75 in my bank account and I'm washing windows to stay alive and feed myself. That program's for rich kids. And she said, no, I don't think you understand. As I was praying, the Lord told me that I will send you there. And she cut me a check for $20,000.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Still get emotionally choked up about it because I'm like, I didn't deserve that kind of kindness from somebody. And she said, you're supposed to go take your friend here. I said, well, we still have to apply to the program. She said, the Lord's already told me you'll get in. So we applied and we got in, just as she said we would. And she paid our way. And I knew that when I went to BYU Jerusalem, I was going to be the best student. And I was going to study the living daylights out of all of the classes were incredible. My professors were awesome. Kerry Muhlestein, who has his own podcast, probably a lot of people listen to, Frank Judd, Jeff Chadwick, just great scholars. And so I went to BYU Jerusalem. I studied hard. I loved it. I loved my time there. And I told those guys, my professors, I wanted to be a chaplain. I came home from BYU. I met a girl there and had dated a little bit. It's kind of under the radar dating at BYU Jerusalem, thing overt, but overt. They're all trying to get you married there anyways. And dated her, and it turns out she wasn't a very nice girl. And I came home and I felt like, all right, I followed the plan. I've done what I'm supposed to do. But in order to make it into the BYU chaplain program, the BYU chaplain program is a master's program at BYU that a lot of people don't know about. But at the time, it was only taking 3 students every other year.
Wow.
And so I had 1 year before I could apply to that program, or I would miss it for 2 years. And so I got down on my knees and I said, God, I've tried to do everything you've wanted me to do, and I felt you guide me. I need a wife. I can do the education, but I'm funny looking and I need a wife. And I need your and 3 days later, Alexis, my wife, called me up. Alexis had written me my whole mission in Scotland. When I came home, she dumped me for another guy. And 3 days after that prayer, she called me up and she said, hey, I'm at BYU. She'd gone on a mission to Spain. She'd come home. She said, do you want to take I just calling. It's funny, when she called me, it came up in my phone as do not answer. Because I was so bad from coming to years now. It's been years since that had happened, but I was still angry about it. And she said, I just wanted to see if you wanted to take a dance class. And I said, no, dancing's stupid. Why would I want to do that? And because I'm a straightforward man, I said, why are you really calling me? She said, oh, I just wanted to dance. I said, that's crap. I've had way too much shit. Why are you really calling me? She said, no, that's it. I said, well, if you want to come over and talk, you're more than welcome. My friends are watching the game. She came over and we began to talk, and it was clear that our lives had changed. I had grown up significantly through my experiences, and she had grown up through serving a mission, and things were right. And we dated for 3 months in pure BYU fashion. I'd known her. She's from my hometown. I'd known her my whole life. And 6 months later, we were married, and great blessing. So I then went to apply to the BYU chaplain program, and went through some rigorous applications and some interviews with the BYU folks. And there was all sorts of people in there that had way more experience, I'd never served in the military. I'd never been around the military. And I got my acceptance letter. I was chosen as one of 3 to be in the program for those years. I was so excited. So I showed up to class, and the guys leading the program were 2 retired Army colonel chaplains. So they'd been colonels for a while, and they were pretty hardcore. And I remember showing up one of my first days, and one of them, who he and I never got along, he's a beautiful man. We just didn't jive with each other. But he said, I just want you to know you weren't our choice. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. Nothing like starting a degree program with you're not our choice. The first guy they selected was Mark DeLuca. He was an Arab linguist who had fought his way across Iraq in Mosul in heavy fighting, and had used his skills as an Arab linguist to track down 44 terrorists and capture them with his men, and was awarded the Bronze Star. And brilliant man. The next guy they chose was Jeremy Brown, who's currently, I believe, one of the head chaplains at Primary Children's Hospital. And he had served in Afghanistan, where he was in finance and carrying around backpacks full of money while getting shot at. And for his efforts in Afghanistan was awarded the Bronze Star. And then there was me, some random Utah. And so I said, curiously, well, I see why you chose them. So if I wasn't your choice, whose choice was I? And he said, you were the department's choice. And it became apparent that my professors at BYU Jerusalem had gone into their bosses and said, if those military guys get a say, this is our say. We want Brandt Peacock. And I guess why I tell you that is not because I was special, but because I look back to one day sitting at a desk where God said, apply to BYU. And as a result, everything in my life, I can look back to that one seemingly insignificant day that I followed the prompting of the Spirit, and it changed the course of my entire life of where God had directed me. And I felt that was, I could see the hand of God work throughout my life to put me in those places as I tried to follow, although very imperfectly, as you know me. And so I went through the BYU program. I graduated with my master's of religious studies with a specialty in military chaplaincy a couple of years later, and then applied to the Navy and was accepted into the Navy, commissioned, and then sent to Newport, Rhode Island for basic officer school training. And then I reported later on, that was during my master's program. When I graduated, I reported to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, to attend Navy chaplain school. Before I did that, I went to church headquarters, and I had been, prior to that, during my time at BYU, I was interviewed by General Oakes, who was Elder Oakes at the time, Robert C. Oakes. And then when I made my way in, I was set apart as a military chaplain at church headquarters. And I was smiled getting to see Frank Clausen, who had told me that I'd struck out 3 times after years of working, finally get there. And shipped out to San Diego, was told, hey, you're going to get to go to San Diego on a ship, the USS Chancellorsville, a guided missile cruiser. It's every boy's dream to be on a $1 billion warship. And they said, oh, and by the way, did they tell you that it's moving to Japan just after you get there? And Alexis was pregnant with twins. And so we shipped off to Japan, and we had our babies. I sent Alexis over there, and then when I got over there, she had to move to Okinawa, where the naval hospital was, clear down south of Japan, to have our babies. And I was sailing around the world, and my captain said, I don't think I can get you to the birth of your kids. So imagine my wife on a foreign island, wow, giving birth to twins. And once again, God intervened, and he said, I might be able to get you off in Singapore, but before we ever got to Singapore, the ship broke hard.
Jeez.
We're going to have to pull back into Japan. And the captain looked at me and he said, really, chaps? And I said, God knows who I am, sir. And I got to get to my babies. And he said, yeah, you do, get down there. And so I was able to make it to the birth of my kids. I was there with them for a week. I flew Alexis all the way back up to Yokosuka, Japan, up by Tokyo. We got her settled in. I got there at 8 o'clock at night, and I deployed on the ship again at 5 the next morning back to sea. I spent 210 days of that year at sea out with the Navy in the South China Sea. And wow,
that's incredible.
So yeah, so I had crazy times at sea, and then my next tour I went to. I could go Navy stories for hours. We don't have time, but my next tour, I got called to Camp Pendleton to serve with the Marine Corps. And I was a Marine Corps infantry chaplain for 2.5 years, where I deployed to that war-torn country of Australia, because somebody's got to do it. Everybody else going to Afghanistan and Iraq. I went to Australia. So trying to keep STDs. I failed as a chaplain, but tried to take care of my men, and had a great deployment in Australia, and then came back. And since I had served with the Navy and then I had served with the Marine Corps, I wanted to hit the trifecta. And so the next tour, I asked for a Coast Guard tour so that I could serve with the U.S. Coast Guard, and landed a sweet gig in Kodiak, Alaska, at the largest Coast Guard base in the nation. And now I jump on helicopters and fly around the Arctic with folks. And the other day when you called me and said, hey, can you do this? I was like, I got to go to the Bering. Got to fly a helicopter with a biologist looking for dead walruses up the Bering Strait. I was 25 miles off the coast of Russia. I was like,
wow.
So, get to do some cool stuff as a chaplain. And so now my family and I have my wife, like I said, we have 4 kids, and we're here in Kodiak, and in another year, well, it's probably this month or next month, I'll get a call from the Navy detailer telling me where my next assignment, wherever God wants us to fly off to next. So that's.
How old are your kids now?
My daughter's 9, and then twin boys that are 6, about to turn 7, and then a little 3-year-old boy. Yeah. So
I saw a recent picture of you guys, and it's a good looking bunch, man.
I appreciate it. It's a good thing. The Navy's an interesting animal, but being a chaplain, I tell everybody it's like being a fake bishop without any authority. I do a lot of marriage counseling, do a lot of suicide prevention stuff, and mostly I'm 100% confidential. I don't follow states' laws; I follow federal laws, and so most of my life is just trying to sit in people's lives with their pain and try to help them navigate those dark days of their life. It's been very rewarding. It's been very challenging. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, I was surprised to find out that all the chaplains are set apart by general authority. It's kind of a unique tie-in to everything.
Yeah, I don't know if they've changed, but when we were set apart as non-proselyting missionaries for the duration of my career. And so my mission from our mission in Scotland has continued. I just get to do it with a wife and kids. and I don't have to proselyte anybody. I just try to help them and support them in their own faiths. So
it's really cool.
That's just perfectly you. It's just perfectly you, Brandt. I love it. All right, brother. Go back to Scotland. Take us to Inverness with Elder Osmond and run through Scotland. As you know, there's no format to it. Just go through it as you like and share your experiences with companions and favorite people.
Yeah, I listened to Elder Osmond, and he's like, "Oh, and by the way, I trained Brandt Peacock in somewhere. I can't remember." And I was like, "Well, for me, it was very important to me because it's my first area." And what a great guy he is, and what a great trainer he was, and learned a lot from him. Inverness was like my hometown, and it still to this day is like my hometown. I love Inverness. I love the ward there. While I was there, I met maybe one of the most important figures of my mission, who was Bert Little. He'd been baptized by some great missionaries, Elder Asari Adu, and some other guys that they were there before I was ever in the mission, but great guys. I baptized Bert, and Bert taught me a lot. Bert struggled in his life. Ever since he was baptized, he struggled with alcohol, but Bert came to church, and Bert held a calling, and he was the ward mission leader, and Bert showed up, and he took care of us, and we took care of him in a lot of respects. But what Bert taught me more than anything was that living the gospel of Jesus Christ you didn't have to be perfect, and you didn't have to pretend to be perfect. That he had his struggles, and he'd had them long before he joined the church, and that as he strove to do what was right, and as he tried to do his best, he kept coming. He didn't give up, and he just kept doing what he's supposed to do. And he called me all my mission, which was against the rules, but he had called me once. I said, "Bert, we can't talk. It's against the mission rules." So he called up President Vriens and called him a mother effer straight to his face and told him, he was drunk. He told President Vriens, called President Vriens, and he said, "If you won't let me talk to Peacock, I'll call you all the time. I'll call you every time President Vriens said, "You can call me." So Bert and I talked my whole mission. He was very special to me. And all the members of Inverness Ward, so many good people there that I still keep in contact with and love. I then moved to Beath. I got called down to Beath. Where do bad sisters go when they die? They go down to Beath where they don't baptize. I think I still have that CD. That's a good mission thing on here. I still have that CD of all those guys years before me that wrote all those songs. I think we should play it on here. But I went down to Beath, and Beath was a refiner's fire for me. The branch had it's since closed, and the building is shut down and laying there with nobody in it. They had lied about the numbers to get a building. That was pretty well known. and the branch was just super small. And I was there with a companion who I loved, but he did not want to be on a mission. He called President Vriens all the time and requested to go home. And that was really difficult. And to come off of a companion like Elder Osmond to a companion who definitely did not want to be there, but was a great guy, but didn't want to be there, it was a real difficult time. And when I thought I'd been there for 3 months, I thought finally, time to get out of Beath. I stayed there, and I stayed in Beath for 6 months, and it was really difficult. And God sent great people during that time to me. There was Jared Lineker, who was my district leader. There was some of those goofy guys like Cotton Bettridge, who was pretty dang funny dude. There was people there that made it worthwhile. And then I got Danny Wilkinson as my companion, who was from Liverpool, and Danny and I clicked. And but the work was really hard. And I remember in that branch, just like many of you, I think I played the piano. I would play the piano every week. I would talk in church, and I would give the priesthood lesson and sometimes a Sunday school lesson. Sometimes I'd be doing all of those parts, and it was exhausting. And towards the end of my time there, I remember knocking doors, and it had just been an awful day and gloomy. And I said, I'll knock one more door. And I knocked. I still know the number 1, Ladeside Court, Kilburney. And I knocked this door, and this guy opened up, and he had the biggest smile on his face. And he said, "Come in." And I thought, "Are you kidding me? I don't know if I've been in a door in months." He said, "Come on in here." So we went on in, and this man was full of life. So full of life and so kind and so genuine. He played the piano. We sang Scottish songs together. He lifted my spirit in a way that when we came out of there, I turned to Elder Wilkinson and I said, "We should knock again. I don't know if he's real." I honestly, and I'm dead serious. I know that sounds corny, but I honestly thought, I don't know if this is a real person. I wonder if God sent an angel to lift us, because after 6 months of Beath, I'm about ready to die. And he was a real guy. His name was Jim Gilmore. And I went back to Jim Gilmore's house often. And Jim Gilmore and I have now had a relationship where we have talked almost every month for the last 15 years. He never joined the church. He always had the missionaries come over. He's a devout Catholic. He had worked with members of our church in his time. And as the years trickled on, it comes out that Jim was a higher ranking admiral in the British Navy.
Oh my gosh.
He never talked about it. He never said anything. But Jim and I have had a beautiful relationship. I've gone back and stayed with him before. And I just went back in, I've been back 4 times. I went back just this year. I needed a little chaplain break. I went back to stay with Jim for a little bit. And he took me to the horse races in Ayr. And he said, "Come on, use your Mormon powers to pick the winning horse." So I picked a horse that was, it was called Classy Al. I was just thinking of Anchorman, like, "Stay classy, Al." So I picked this horse called Classy Al. It was going off at 17-1 odds. It won and paid out those dudes I was with a ton of money. And they thought, "Yep, he's done it again. He showed up here. He's brought his magic." So great time with Jim. I think that was something that my mission taught me as well, that there are people that never join the church that are special to us. And that I know that Jim will accept the gospel someday. And he always asks me, every time we talk, he says, "Have you put my name in the book?" And he means, have you put my name in the temple this month? Have you called and put my name in the temple? And he says, "I know it helps me." And so I continue to put Jim's in the temple, and he continues to do his Jim thing, and it's had a great relationship for all these years. So I moved from Beath, and I went to Dundee. And in Dundee, I had Elder Lukes, who was from Germany, as a companion. He was a lot of fun, great guy. And I trained Elder Jesse Smith. And I was only with him for 6 weeks. And then I love Dundee. It was great. The wards were good. And then I got a call saying it's time to go to Aberdeen and meet your new companion, Elder Hewlett. And so I showed up to Aberdeen and loved every second of my time in Aberdeen. I mean, what a place and what a people. I love that ward more than I can say, and I love the missionaries we served with there. There's a lot of learning and growth. But I loved our time together there. I love the people of Aberdeen. So I don't know. You want to chime in? I just keep talking. So.
No, it was interesting when I, thinking back to it, President Vriens had gone home, and so President Frederickson had said, "Your new companion is Elder Peacock," and I hadn't even heard your name to that point in the mission, and I started asking around, anybody know Elder Peacock? And I said, and most of the people that did know you, they said, "Oh, you've got a good one. Like, you have no idea. He's incredible." And you came in, and you were really a breath of fresh air for me. I enjoyed serving with Elder Pattenden, Stuart Pattenden, and we got along all right, but it wasn't a match made in heaven. And interestingly enough, looking back to it, Christian Lucas and Chris Harlow were the other missionaries in our mission, or in the Aberdeen ward at the time, and so I was the only American. So I was just inundated with the Brits and telling me, I couldn't say one word or the other, and I'd do it just to tick Pattenden off. I know he hated that, but yeah, it was a breath of fresh air. And honestly, more than anything, Peacock, you really helped me realize that work and fun can coincide with one another. And I felt like I was much more robotic the beginning of my mission to a fault. And so I really was able to open up and enjoy the latter part of my mission with you, and because you killed me off. But man, that 3 months of time is some of the fondest times that I can recall on my mission. So thank you.
Yeah, I've always struggled. I love the naturalness of the gospel. I've never been afraid of speaking about the gospel or talking about it, or where other people find it. I've even heard people say, "Oh, I lived here for 2 years." I'm like, I didn't live there. I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ, right? Like, I've never been ashamed to speak out about, but I've always found it interesting that I think the mission and the military and these other things have been a balancing act for me, because the gospel is very natural to me. And I try to be as genuine as possible in who I am and how I live. And sometimes the rigidity of things can come off, at least for my personality, like I'm not, like I'm too goofy, or that I'm not in it to win it, or that I'm not, I don't know, something. And sometimes I felt like I'm too dodgy for the hardcore LDS people and not dodgy enough for the people of the military that I'm with. And I find myself in this kind of no man's land of my life, which is that, I've been known to say a swear or two, and I've been known to, I think the military chaplaincy has been a good fit for me, where there is fun and adventure with religion and with spirituality, but not consumed by the maybe robotic or judgmentalness of it sometimes. But that's always been I struggle with that sometimes. So.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. And it's one of those things that, when you're around the church a lot, growing up in Utah, it's just one of those cultural things that has become a norm. And I think that's why my wife and I have been more drawn to live outside of the state, just so that we can get a little bit of a breath of fresh air from being swallowed by those who are constantly inundating us with expectations of who I'm supposed to be and how I'm supposed to be. And, because I think that's why you and I got along so well, Peacock, is because I'm definitely not cut from a clean cloth. I definitely got down and dirty, and I've said a few swear words in my lifetime, and I can guarantee that there's more to come. But it's just one of those things, right? That you have to understand where the gospel suits you best, right? As they've taught us in recent years with the Come Follow Me manuals and Preach My Gospel as a tool, that the gospel is very personal, and it's an opportunity to make it your own, and it's not a one size fits all type of thing. I'm sorry, it is a one size fits all thing, but you don't have to be a certain size to fit, if that makes more sense. And so,
Yeah, and yeah,
it that was my biggest thing. Like, I remember thinking to myself in that last 3 months with you of my mission, I was like, okay, let's go out on a high note, let's work hard and do all the things we did. But some of my favorite memories were, the movie night. Sorry, that was with Patented. I'm thinking of the sing song night that we did, the Disney like musical thing, and the yodeling peacock skip dance to the Seven Dwarfs, and Kiss the Girl with Little Mermaid. I mean, those were fun times that, if I had been in a different part of my mission or a different mindset, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed those as much. But those were really good experiences, and it really helped us become more humane, I guess, with the ward. Like, we were less the robotic missionaries, and we were more part of the ward family. And I think that's why Aberdeen became such a great home away from home for us.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I loved being there, and I think it's because of a natural love for the people.
Hmm.
I mean, people say they love people, but people can feel whether you really love them or whether you're saying you love them because you're supposed to. And when you have a real natural love for those people, like I said, I went back to Scotland recently, and I stopped by Aberdeen, and uh, they were having a ward night that was it was based on the countries of their missions, and they all had booths. And I walked in the door, and I wore an America shirt just so that I could represent America for their night. I walked in, and what I loved was it wasn't like elation to see me. As soon as I walked in, Bishop Goldie and some of those Goldies were like, "All right, Peacock," like I'd never left. Like they'd seen me last week. Hey,
Right.
Peacock's back. Like just as natural. I fell in. We had a great night, but it was because and a lot of those people I still talk to, and so you have these relationships. It's like, hey, you know, people will call me from Aberdeen and say, "When are you coming home?" And it feels like home because of the love that we have for those folks there, and such good people. I want to touch back on what you were saying. I think one of those great things that my mission taught me is that, like, it is not that I want to put this right. Repentance can be difficult. And yet the mission taught me that, as we teach these people, we ask them to confess and forsake, and then we baptize them. What does it take to overcome some of these sins? Where sometimes in the church, some of these sins seem so daunting. Oh, they're drinking. And like I said with Bert, I watched Bert continually struggle but try. But I also saw people that are like, oh, okay, well, I'll stop. And then God was like, cool, you're forgiven. Like
Hmm.
what we make into these mountains that it really, as a chaplain, I remember a young Marine came to see me, and his dad had just passed away. And his dad was everything to him. And he sat in the chair, and he sat there crying. And the Spirit told me, give him a blessing, which is weird if you've ever served around Marines. Like, I'm not going to lay my hands on a kid's head. It's a weird thing in that kind of setting. The Spirit said again, ask him if he wants a blessing. So I said to him, hey, in our church, we do these blessings where I lay my hands on your head, and it's a blessing of comfort. And these kind of times he said, sure, do it. So I laid my hands on this kid's head. And as I blessed him, I felt the presence of his father in the room. An incredibly deeply spiritual experience. And I know he could feel him in the room. And I could feel the overwhelming love that the Savior had for this young Marine. And when we finished, he looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. And I looked, and he had the biggest lip of chew in his mouth I've ever seen. This big old dip of chew. And he sat there and cried and spit his dip in the cup and said, I could feel him here. And I said, so could I. Now, obviously, that Marine's not under covenant, but it taught me something. My mission and my work in the chaplaincy have continued to teach me that God really loves his children, and that he will meet them where they're at to help them to progress, not try to meet them where it's some superior level, and say, he comes to us where we're at and tries to progress us, not the other way around. And I love that about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I love that about him, and ministering is the same thing. Build relationships, meet people where they're at, and without those weird expectations or all those other things, meet people where they're at and love them where they're at, and watch the growth that comes from that. Or place a bunch of weird expectations on people and watch them flounder. And so I felt like the mission in Scotland helped me see that in people, and has blessed my ministry as a chaplain, be able to remember that, so that I have real faith that I have a great love for the people I serve, and that repentance is very possible, much more possible and much more willing than many people want to make it out to be. If that makes sense.
Agreed, 100%.
So, yeah. Had a great time in Aberdeen. I think maybe one of the most formative experiences in Aberdeen for me was after you left. I've been on my mission now for a long time, and I've rarely taught, and I definitely haven't taught anybody that's been baptized. And I was getting discouraged. You were gone, which was a huge blow to me, because we had such a wonderful relationship. And I went and asked Jeremy Lamro, an expat who teaches at BYU Idaho, if he'd give me a blessing. He laid his hands on my head, and he told me that if I would do specific things, I've never had a blessing like that. If I would do specific things, that I would see a man come into the church who would receive the gospel and remain faithful the rest of his life. That's a pretty gutsy blessing. So I set out to try to do things that Jeremy Lamro had instructed me through the Spirit to do. And I was imperfect at them, but I tried. And we met Raymond Murray. And Raymond Murray, you had probably met him when you were there at some point. He had showed up, but he wasn't ready. And his father-in-law had said, "Don't teach him. He's not ready yet. I'll tell you when he's ready." And I know a lot of missionaries that would say, "No, they're ready." No, we just left him alone. We said hi to him. We played volleyball with him. But one day we got a call from his father-in-law that said, "Raymond's ready to be taught." And it was me and Elder McCabe. And I'd had Elder O'Brien in there with me too before that. But by this time it's Elder McCabe. And we went in and taught Raymond, and only time in my mission where I taught somebody the first lesson, and he was ready to receive the gospel and agreed to be baptized. And we had Duncan, his father-in-law, baptize him. And that started a lifelong relationship with Raymond. Raymond later, his wife, who was the actual member, did not want to live the gospel at all. Once Raymond found the truth, he was not going to let it go. And he came to her and said, I'm not giving up the gospel. And she said, "Well, then I'm done with you." And they divorced. And and Raymond said, "I know it was right. I wasn't going to leave the gospel." And he found another young woman who's from down in Barhead, Rebecca McKechnie, which some of you missionaries will know, the McKechnie family down there. And Raymond married Rebecca, and I flew back over and was the best man at their wedding. And then they were sealed in the temple, and I was the only person to represent Raymond's side of the family to come and to go through the temple there with Raymond at that time. And beautiful experience. And so Raymond and I have had such a great friendship. He's only a year older than I am. And we've been friends our whole time since the mission. And this last time when I went back, I called him and said, would you go on a Scottish road trip with me for 2 weeks? And he said, absolutely. So I flew in, and Raymond and I traveled the whole mission and stopped and saw the folks in Inverness. We had a ward party in Inverness and got to see all our friends. And we went to Aberdeen, and Raymond had been baptized in Aberdeen, so they all knew him. So he had great homecoming and stayed with the Wares. And then we just traveled all over Scotland, staying in Airbnbs together. And it was wow. Raymond Murray's one of the greatest blessings of my life. And I've never been ordained a high priest, but he has. And he served in bishoprics and is currently serving as the elder quorum in the Pollock ward. And I know that Jeremy Lamro was inspired with the Spirit when he said that a man would come to the gospel. And I love Raymond Murray with all my heart, and always will. And then when I got married, Raymond came over with his kilt, and Raymond came to my wedding as well. And been a great blessing to me as a friend and a brother. So that was of all the things that happened on my mission, Raymond was worth it. And that was awesome. So I finished up in Aberdeen, and then there's some crazy wild stuff that went down. I won't cover it here. Probably doesn't need to be said here, but some crazy wild stuff went down. And the mission president came to me and he said, "Hey, you've gone through some of these difficult experiences as the zone leader. Kind of what do you want to do next?" And I said, "I want to go home back to Inverness. I want to go back to Bert and take care of Bert." And he said, "Okay." And so I went back to Inverness. I had great companions. I had Colin Kilgore, who was in the flat with me. He wasn't my companion, but a great blessing to me at the time. And I finished out my mission in Inverness, taking care of Bert. And I'll never forget the day that I left Bert at the train station, and I knew that I would not see Bert again. And the next year at college, I had been speaking with Bert. We talked regularly, but I got a call from Julie Williams saying that Bert had died and that the missionaries had found him. Sorry, I'm all emotional during this, but it was the missionaries who always took care of Bert, and it was the missionaries who had found him that knew he had passed away. And that was my first time going back to Scotland. It was 2009. And I always told Bert that I would fly back. Before I left, he gave me his kilt jacket. He had a fancy kilt jacket. He'd been a Highland dancer. He gave me his kilt jacket for my wedding. And I gave him mine, which was like a 50-pound ugly kilt jacket. And I told him that if he passed away, I'd come back and bury him. And so as promised, I went back, and I had no money. And a scholarship at my college came in for just about the exact amount of a ticket to Scotland, with a note saying Peacock can use this scholarship for whatever he wants. And I flew home and I buried Bert, and I dedicated his grave. And I still think to this day, and when I got married, that I was wearing Bert's kilt jacket, and my kilt jacket's buried with Bert back in Scotland. And so it was a great blessing to me. Bert was and always will be. I went and did his temple work for him, and finished his endowment, and just always feel like he's still with me. So that's that's my kind of finish to my mission there, and then came home, and you've heard my story. So I've had a wonderful life. I've been blessed more than I deserve for who I am and for my faults. But I know that Jesus Christ lives. I know that by following the Spirit, we truly can be led and guided and directed. And that a relationship with the Scottish people, I love the Scots. I serve the United States Navy, and every time I salute somebody, I say America. But I told my wife, I think I say America so much to remind myself that I'm an American, because I just as soon go back to buy a little croft and maybe get a Highland cow named Hamish and I've spent my whole career listening to people's problems. I'd love to just sit with a cow in the Highlands, eat a steak pie, and spend the remainder of my life in Inverness with my AIM folk. But I know that we all feel those feelings towards those people, and I'm just grateful that I feel very blessed that I feel like God led me to find a people that were like me, that were somewhat dodgy, that would say funny things, but were also deeply spiritual. And like I said, maybe I've never felt so much at home sometimes in other church settings or in military settings, but I've always felt home with the Scottish saints and their bluntness and their loving kindness. And I think God was able to show me throughout my life that here's a people that I think are more like me. And I've used Scotland as a refuge when I felt difficult things in my life to go back and recenter myself with the people that I feel are mine. So.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that.
Oh, man.
Amen.
Yeah, amen. I'm getting choked up because I know your love. um, I'm sorry. There wasn't a day that went by after I went home that I didn't long to be in all of Aberdeen with Brandt Peacock. I mean, you probably don't remember this, but the day I got home, I told you I'll call you, and I called you in the morning. It was probably like 2 a.m. in Utah, and I was like, I need to call Peacock, and so I called you, and you were in the midst of like trying to get out the door. I think you had the APs in your flat and something. But I had to hear your voice, and it was so good to come back in August and see you in the mission for a little bit before you were going home. But I don't know. We just had so many good times together. I was just thinking when you're talking about Inverness, how we took a little drive up to Loch Ness, and we pulled over on some small side of the road, and we went down and we drank the water, and we both said to each other, this is going to be the reason that if we live to be 200 years old, it's because we drank the magic water of Loch Ness. Do you remember that?
I do remember. I think probably just lucky we didn't get dysentery. God probably protected the missionaries on that one.
Oh man, it probably wasn't the smartest thing, but man, it was one of the best pure drinks of water I'd ever had. My gosh.
I often think of Robert Burns in his poem, "My home is in the Highlands. My home is not here. My home is in the Highlands of chasing the deer." And as I've told you, in my mission, I spent 8 months in Aberdeen, and I spent 5 months in Inverness. And so I really was in Northern Scotland. I never served in the Glasgow stake, and I never served in the Edinburgh stake. And I'm pretty proud of that.
Oh. You're one of those rare ones, right?
One of those rare ones. So, but yeah, just a wonderful memories and the difficult challenges. I really feel like on my mission, I came to learn that the Lord would help take care of me even when I felt alone. And I have mixed emotions. I understand different age, different time, different people. But I look back on my mission, I think one of the greatest blessings of my life was that I couldn't call home, and that the lag time between letters was so long, because I feel like it really forced me to get on my knees. It made it that I couldn't call mom and dad and ask them how to handle the situation, but that I had to do it. And I felt many times that the Savior had my back, that I could learn that He would fight my battles for me and that He would help me. And I think that maybe that's a hallmark of our generation. I don't know, but I'm incredibly grateful to have served when I served for that purpose, because it helped me in the situations. I remember calling. My dad is a wonderful man. I love him more than anything. But calling my dad and saying, "Hey, Dad, I just had this thing happen to me in the Navy," and have him say, "Yeah, I think I kind of know what that's like." No, you don't.
Jeez.
No, the people that know what it's like are the 200 people that are here with me on this warship, and that's the only people. I have nobody to turn to where I can relate what's going on or gain advice from people. And so I find myself on my knees saying, "I don't know how to do this. Please help me. Please guide me." And my mission taught me that, because couldn't turn and just ask mom and dad. That's been a great blessing for me in my life in what I do now. So I love that aspect of our mission.
So who were your last companions in Inverness?
My last companions were Elder Bath Taylor, and he was from down Bristol Way, I had him for 6 weeks. He's a funny character. And then I had Elder Harrison, and he was so quiet that I think I drove him nuts. And I couldn't. He was so quiet. I had to go look his name up in my journal today to remember what his last name was because he's so quiet. Terrible. Remember everybody else, but Elder Harrison was so quiet.
He made a ghostly impression on you.
But yeah, I think there are people on the podcast. I think there are people that I would want to hear about their lives. People that I love that, I don't know whether they ever think about me, but I think of people like McKay Lynch. I sure would love to hear from a McKay. And you know, I'm trying to think of who else. I'd like to hear from Michael Chambers. Michael Chambers was our district leader in Aberdeen. He was a great guy. But
he's a future guest. He'll be on.
Good. I'd like to hear from Jared Lineker. And the man that I really want to hear from, because when I was back in Scotland, everybody told me he's the bishop. And I thought, you got to be freaking kidding me, is my man, Dan Conway. I want to hear Conway come on this podcast so bad. Dan Conway was so good to me on my mission and such a breath of fresh air for me in Beath. But always just so funny. And I just can imagine, I would love to have Dan Conway as my bishop. So I'd like to hear him on here. Just to hear his life and experiences. But
we talked to Dan just what was it, Thursday last week? So you'll hear his stories and his antics.
Great.
The other person that we talked to earlier that shared a story about you was Doug Pullen.
Oh, Dougie Pullen.
Yeah, he shared an experience where he said he was in Beath with you, and you were driving in a car, and you drove down one of those T dead ends, and a bunch of Neds had put like wheelie bins and like blocked the road. Can you confirm this?
That did happen, yes. But I can't remember what happened in the story, because I remember driving down that road. Finish it for me.
So he relayed that he said they got to the end, they blocked off the road, and I guess they had bats and sticks and things, and like were coming toward you. And Doug said, "I'm sorry, Peacock," and he just put it in drive and drove through the wheelie bins to get away.
Yes. Beef was rough. Beef was it was funny because it's the most pastoral scene you've ever seen. And yet in Beef, I almost got killed multiple times. I was walking down the road one time and these Neds came out and they were drunker than a skunk. One had just gotten out of prison. They had a bottle of vodka and they threw a bottle of vodka at my feet. It went all over my shoes. And now there's a glass bottle. I thought, I'm dead. I'm getting bottled. They're yelling how they're going to kill us. They're right up in our faces. And all of a sudden the phone rang, their phone. And my companion, Elder Evans, who was way more street savvy than I ever had been, said, "Oh, do you want me to get that for you?" And they handed it to him. And it was this guy's girlfriend screaming at this guy. And Evans said, no, he's fine. Talked this girl off the ledge. And next thing you know, they're kissing us.
Jeez.
And then they wanted us to drink with them over by this pavilion. And so we walked with them towards the pavilion. And then Evans said, "Now we can run." And then we took off running. And then screamed and chased us. And I thought that was crazy. So I said, let's go take a break. Let's go have lunch and come back later. And when we come back, let's go to the opposite side of town. We had a car. He said, that sounds great. We went and had lunch, went to the opposite side of town in the afternoon. And we went up a dead end street, parked the car, and started chapping doors. And we chapped a door and it opens and it's all of those same people. Yeah. I don't know how that. And all of a sudden, all of these people run out. "It's them, get them!" And they come hauling out of this house. We hauled up the street, but it's a dead end road. We can't get to our car. And we did some move out of Shaun of the Dead where we jumped through people's backyards over stone walls and then under this bramble bush to get our car and get out of there. And I said, "I'm done for the day. I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm done chaplain." That's me done. That was that day in Kilburnie. I was like, my goodness, like. There was another time in Dundee. The only time I've ever impersonated a federal agent. I was coming across a park in Dundee. I bet 16 Neds. It was dark. And 16 Neds start coming out of the woodworks, walking right towards me and my companion. And Luke starts getting scared. I said, tuck your badge. I tucked my badge inside my pocket. I pulled out my wallet and I said, all right, boys, it's a CID. Let's keep it moving. They said, oh, all right, no problems, mate. They walked around. I was like, I can't believe that worked.
Wow.
I was like, there you go. I'm a federal agent of the CID. But I was like, I didn't know what else to do. I thought we were going to die. So
it's because you had such a spot-on Scottish accent. You could throw it at anybody and didn't matter.
What was funny is that when I went back to visit Scotland, I'm like looking over my shoulders for these Neds, right? And then I realized I'm not in a suit and tie. Nobody cares. People are coming up. They're super friendly. I was like, oh, it's a whole different country when you're not wearing a badge. didn't have to look over my shoulder. I'm in a crowd with all these Neds, and I thought, oh, they're going to get me. And then I thought, no, they're not. They're just fine.
That's so funny.
So,
well, and my experience, I shared. I had some people that said stuff to us, but they would never approach me. And obviously, I'm sure it was my size, because I don't remember ever having any issues when you and I were together with them. I mean, we did have a car, but we went about and didn't have any issues. But I don't know. It's always funny to hear other missionaries' experiences with regards to that, because I wasn't there. I'd never had that experience, so it's always very enlightening. Sorry to say that
we can't all be tall, dark, and handsome. We can't all be tall, dark.
Jeez Louise.
Some of us, but I just think that's, we all have those different experiences. But no, I never had any problems when I was with you. I was looking at our T-book. I don't know if I've heard people mention T-books on here, but I looked at my T-book today in preparation for this, and there's a picture of you and I could do a good Scottish accent. And so at Aberdeen, they had me play Santa Claus. If you got me and Hewlett standing next to each other, who's going to play Santa Claus? And they said, it can't be Hewlett. It's got to be a Scottish accent. The kids think he's got a Scottish accent. So I have a picture of Hewlett towering over me and me in full Santa garb, standing there waiting for the kids to come up so that I could play Santa Claus with a Scottish accent. I was cracking up. I'll have to send this picture to you of you towering over me and me standing there dressed as Santa. Brilliant.
I completely forgot about that. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's too funny. You were an impressive Santa, I can tell you that.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
The loons and the quains didn't know a fit. They didn't know it at all.
No, they're funny. No, it's it's good. You go back there and it's just like our hometowns. Some things change, but mostly those towns don't ever change. They haven't changed in hundreds of years, and I hope they never do. And Aberdeen's the same Aberdeen that it always was. And just good, solid people. I was surprised to go back to the Aberdeen ward, and there's just a million children. The Goldies have reproduced. The Johnny Kennedy's back reproduced. And so all of a sudden, what was like a dying ward with like Tyson and all these old folks is now this thriving ward with a million kids. It made my heart so happy to see the church well and alive and growing through that next generation of folks there that we kind of came up with. And while I was there, Hannah S.E.M was there. I went and met with Dougie and Ann S.E.M, which was amazing. And the way and Hannah S.E.M came up and she said, hey, look, I got somebody on the phone. And it was Joanne from Dundee. And she said, here, Joanne wants to talk to you. And just got to see all those folks.
Oh, man.
So
Amazing people. All right. I know that you only served a portion of your mission with President and Sister Vriens, but what's your favorite memories of them?
Oh, I had a difficult experience that I want to share. And because I think it merits something that President Vriens taught me. President Vriens at one point had an issue that I think there was I'll just be honest, it was a district sleepover. And I had thought it was authorized. It turns out it was not authorized. He had authorized it for a different district, but our district leader hadn't asked the same, and so it wasn't authorized. And our district leader was going home, so he wasn't going to take the blame for it. And I remember President Vriens called each of us up. We all had to get on the phone with him. And I remember picking up the phone. I've been in beef now for months and months. I've gone through a lot of difficult experiences. And President Vriens picked up the phone and he said, Elder Peacock, I expect this from some people, but not from you. You are worthless. And boy, that hurt. And I went home and I was angry. I remember going back to the flat and I threw my books and I was angry. And my companion said to me, who I thought at the time was he later got sent home. He said, well, if you're so mad at him, why don't you call him up? And I thought, I can't call him up. And he said, sure you can. So I called up President Vriens and I said, President Vriens, you've lied. And he said, tell me. And I said, when we're on the phone yesterday, you told me that I was worthless. I said, I have sat here and labored and done everything you wanted me to do. And I didn't think I was in the wrong. And you called up and called me worthless. And I want you to know, I don't care what you think. I am not worthless. And he said, Elder Peacock, I apologize with all my heart. I was wrong to say that. And I knew you'd call. And I love that story, not because President Vriens, I'm sure, just like I can't imagine if I was a mission president what I would have called us. but in doing so, he taught me that he was a very imposing figure. You know that from his hugs, from all his interviews, from all that. So a very imposing figure. But when I called him up and said, this is what's on my heart, he was quick to apologize. He was quick to make it right. He was quick to love. And he was quick to make it right with me. And that taught me a lot. In my life, I've been too quick to judge or say something that maybe I didn't mean. And he taught me real quickly. He could have said, nope, I'm the mission president. I've run modern display for years and I know what I'm doing. And he could have done that. And he said, Elder Peacock, you're so right. I am so sorry. And that taught me the true humility of what a great leader he is and was, that he could apologize for his mistakes and that he wasn't infallible, but also that he was loving and really caring. And I take that as a great lesson of leadership from President Vriens.
I love that. It's a great story.
So,
all right.
And I love Sister Vriens has been great to me ever since we got home. I've been to their home just like a lot of you have, and Sister Vriens has always been so welcoming. And I've watched Sister Vriens multiple times when I've been back take care of President Vriens as he, in his kind of declining old age, and what a hero she is for being able to take care of him as he's gone through his later struggles in his age. She's an incredible person.
Yes, she is 100%. Well, we really have loved every minute. I know I have. I'm speaking for Jack.
Absolutely.
You've mentioned a few names. Is there any other names that come to mind that people you'd like to hear from potentially in future episodes?
I'd like to hear. I'm trying to think of who else that who I love that I'd love to hear. Donovan Oliver. Donovan Oliver was such a great support to me. He's really hard to get a hold of. He's a quiet man by nature anyways, but a giant of a man. And I'd like to hear from Donovan Oliver. He's just he was such a good, and is, I'm sure. But I find it hard to keep in touch with him, and I'd love to hear from him if he's around.
Yeah, I'm just checking my notes. I've reached out to him, but I haven't heard back from him, so I'll keep trying.
Sounds good.
Well, Brandt, thank you again for taking time and coming on to reflect. And I mean, the Spirit's been here and the love has been here, and that's what this is all about. So thank you for contributing and continuing to share your love of Scotland. One quick memory that I'm going to leave it on, and I'll say it because I was super impressed with you, is I remember at one mission reunion, they asked like the Scots to come up and sing a song, if you remember this. And you went up with all the Scots to sing a Scottish song because you had the song well tuned in your heart, and you sang it as if you'd lived in Scotland your whole life. And then I think you read a poem with your Scottish accent for everybody, and I was just like, man, this guy is honestly, you were cut from the cloth of Scotland and placed in Castledale, Utah, and had to find your way back. And I'm glad you did. But I could tell the love of Scotland in everything that you did in all my interactions with you, both in the mission and since. So thanks for being so great.
Thanks so much. Love you guys, and thanks for doing this and giving us the opportunity, and just been awesome. So
thanks, Brandt. We love you. We will certainly talk to you more soon. All right.
Great. Take care.
Thanks, Brandt.
Yeah.
Bye.